The Terran Death World, or as the natives called it, Earth. It was a planet like no other where every breath could be your last. The land was crawling with dangers. Unseen by the untrained eyes for centuries, the Terrans secluded themselves, honing their skills and mastering the environment in ways no other race could ever imagine or even start to understand. Earth was the ultimate training ground where Terran were not just survivors but lethal predators, and for anyone foolish enough to invade, it was not a prize. It was a death trap. General Venor stood confidently before the holographic display, scanning the initial data flickering in the air. The Croton Empire, a major force in the cosmos, has been expanding their territory across numerous worlds, bringing the unfortunate planets under their ruthless rule. Devenor. This was just another day, and Terra was simply another target. The Cowans were intimidating, no doubt about it. They were tall, with bodies covered in natural armor that looked like dark leathery skin studded with bony spikes. Their red eyes glowed from their insect-like heads, and a hard ridge ran from their foreheads down to their sharp, twitching mandibles, which always seemed hungry. Their limbs were long and ended in clawed fingers, making them look like they were always ready for a fight. With their hunched postures and spiked exoskeletons, the crones seemed more like monsters than anything else. Vanicor glanced at the hologram of Earth, curling his lip as his jagged teeth peeked out from his mandibles. The initial scans of the planet seemed dull. Terrara was full of vegetation, vast jungles and forests covering most of the planet. Animals roamed freely, and while there were signs of intelligent life, there were no apparent signs of advanced technology nor weaponry. Venor was disgusted. To him, this was just a backwater planet still relying on its ecosystem instead of advanced technology. He arrogantly started addressing his officers, primitive, overgrown, with plants crawling with life, no technology to speak of. This will be an easy victory. At the other end of the command table, Lieutenant Saren stared in concern at the biosigns coming from the scans. Her antenna twitched with unease. She had served in the Croton military long enough to know that looks could be deceiving them. Readings showed extreme biological activity, higher than any other planet they had encountered. It seemed unnatural. General Saren began in a measured tone. The biosigns are unusual. We should gather more data before. Venor quickly interrupts with a dismissive wave. Enough. He sneered at her. We've conquered far greater threats than this terror. We don't need more data to crush a planet full of trees and animals. Saren was silenced, forced to hold in her unease. She had witnessed too many campaigns where overconfidence led to defeat, but she couldn't argue with Venor. His mind was already made up. The Croton Empire was on the move, and Earth was their target. Venor stood tall and addressed his officers. Prepare the armada. We will launch a full-scale invasion within days. However, we'll send a recon team to scout the surface first, find out where their capital is and how much resistance we can expect. After that, we'll strike swiftly and decisively. The officers scrambled to carry out the order. Vor's eyes returned to the hologram of Earth. He looked at it coldly and determined this was to be another achievement, another medal handed to him from the Emperor. He could already see Terra forests ablaze under the might of his army and technology. The native bowing and begging for mercy. In his mind, victory was already his. The next day, Captain Zarek Talis was summoned before General Vanner aboard the Crowan-led ship. Zarek was one of the most reliable and experienced officers under Vor's command. He led countless recon missions during his time, but he couldn't help feeling uneasy this time. It felt different. There was something about what Soren said that left him bothered, but it wasn't his place to question commands. Vor's eyes stared deep into his soul as he spoke. Captain Zarek, you and your team will be the first to set foot on this planet. Your mission is simple: locate the capital of this world, assess the defenses, and report back. I expect this to be a routine operation. I want detailed reconnaissance. Leave nothing to chance. Zerk nodded. Understood. General will gather the intel you need. That General pointed towards the large viewpoint overlooking the fleet. 1,000 ships with 100,000 soldiers aboard floated in formation. Their sleek silver bodies reflected the light of the distant stars. Terrara is a primordial world, Captain. Our scans show that the natives rely more on biology than technology, which means they will be Easily crushed, but make no mistake, I want this planet intact. Its resources could prove valuable to the Empire. Xeric saluted. I'll make sure of it, sir. Venor gave him a dismissive wave of his hand, sending him off as Xeric left her. Couldn't shake the sense of unease and worry he was taught to never underestimate an enemy, and Tarara was just setting off alarm bells in his mind. It was strange how life thrived on them. Planet unchecked by the hands of the natives, the recon team was already preparing in the Hangar 10 of the Cowan's best scouts, armed with advanced weaponry and sleek combat armor. They boarded their vessel ready for whatever this planet was going to throw their way. No barbaric world like this could ever pose a real threat. Ready for launch, Xeric said into the comm the ships. Engines roared as they departed the lead ship, heading towards the Parn surface. The thick greens spread out beneath them as they descended into the atmosphere. Xeric activated the autopilot, which led them on the outskirts of the area with the highest concentration of life signals, what they assumed must be the Terran capital. Looks like we're landing in a jungle, one of the soldiers commented. Xeric focused his eyes on the land as the ship slid through the clouds and the dense jungle came into view. Stay sharp, this place is unrefined and must be filled with wildlife. The recon ship landed softly in a clearing. They found the jungle was dead quiet. Not even the sound of a rustling tree. The door slid open and Xeric and his team stepped onto the Terran soil for the first time. The mission had begun. There were not signs of the natives. All the team could see was jungle. No buildings, no structures, just endless jungle. Xeric tapped his communicator as they advanced towards the life signals. This is Captain Xeric. We've touched down. Commencing Operation Silence. Xeric looked concerned as he tapped the communicator again. Nothing, no static, no interference, just silence. He quickly tried out his private comms, but still nothing. Comms are down, Xeric muttered to his team. Must be some kind of interference from the environment. One of the soldiers, Sergeant Oral, raised one of his antennae. No surprise, the tech on this planet seems almost non-existent. Xeric ignored Orlick. That dead silence was eating at him, but he couldn't let it show. Spread out into formation. We're continuing on foot. The jungle was so thick that just walking was a chore. The team moved carefully, scanning their surroundings for anything that moves. The Cowans relied heavily on their armored bodies. They believed it could protect them from whatever threats they'd encounter. I don't see how intelligent life could survive here, said Private Drell, kicking a large vine out of his way. It's like the whole place is designed to choke itself. Xeric led the pack, moving forward, checking the scanner on his ARM console. We're not here to sightsee, focus on locating the capital and let's get out of here. But as they moved deeper into the jungle, they could feel a slight shift in the atmosphere. The trees seemed larger and their branches curled in ways that seemed unnatural. The dense vegetation started to feel more like a trap app. Sudden rustle caught Zark's attention. Without any warning, massive vines dropped from above, thick and covered in sharp thorns. The vines shone in the dim light. One of the vines shot down towards Private Doctor. Before he could even react, it wrapped around his legs and yanked him off the ground. Doctor screamed as the thorns tore through his armor like a saw, shredding it as if it were simple fabric. His blue blood sprayed into the air, covering his comrade as the vine dragged him up into the trees. The rest of the team froze, staring in horror as screams echoed through the jungle, then abruptly cut off by the stars. Sergeant Auric trembled. Zark's heart raced in his chest, the sound of his own heartbeat drowning his thoughts. Move, 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 he barked at his soldiers. The team sprinted after, their leader, blasters raised, ready for action. They scanned their surroundings, but the jungle seemed to close in on them, the leaves watching them like a predator, stalking its prey. The team pressed forward, cutting through the bushes, but the jungle only got more hostile. Vines sprang across the air. The team desperately dodged and weaved through barbs, shot out from the thorny bushes, piercing their armors as they ran. Strange, pulsating plants puffed clouds of spores in their face, blurring their vision. Captain, another soldier screamed as a massive luminescent snake dropped from a tree. Its shiny neon scales reflected the light from their visors. The snake struck with terrifying speed, wrapping itself around Private Coral in a second, squeezing the life out of him. Coral struggled helplessly, clawing at the thick, scaly body. His armor cracked under the pressure. The rest could hear his exoskeleton cracking. To bits, the serpent tossed the lifeless body aside, turning its gaze onto the next target. "How can anyone survive here?" shouted Corporal Rez, firing his blaster at the creature. The beams merely glanced off the snake's scales, barely slowing it down. Xeric quickly fired into the snake's head, finally killing it. But it was little too late. 2 of his men were already dead. The jungle grew darker by the second. "Stay calm," Zerk shouted, his voice strained. "We push forward." The survivors kept moving, their fear choking them from the inside. The jungle felt alive. It was hunting them. Every step they took was met with another horror. Carnivorous plants snapped at their feet. Toxic spores filled the air. Stalker beasts attacked them from the shadows. Another soldier let out a scream as a predator plant that lunged from underneath and made on him with sharp teeth. It latched onto him, pulling him into the earth, eating him alive. His screams felt never-ending. His body was slowly torn apart. Zark's mind raced as they ran. This was a nightmare, the absolute worst-case scenario, getting killed before even encountering a single native. This was supposed to be a simple recon mission, but here he was running for his life, watching his soldiers die brutally one by one. This environment defied all logic. How could anything live here? How could the natives have survived on a planet where every plant and animal seemed designed to kill? As more of his team was picked off, Xeric became painfully aware of one truth: Terrara was not what they had thought. This was no primitive backwater, it was something way worse. Xeric was now the only one left. Her sprinted through the jungle, his breath heavy and ragged. His prized armor was in pieces, his blaster gone. A massive panther relentlessly pursued him, its bright yellow eyes fixated on its prey. He stumbled through the bushes, his leg caught up on a root. He barely got himself up as the beast jumped at him, desperate to escape. Xeric ran towards a nearby tree and began to climb, his claws digging into the bark. As he scaled the huge trunk, his face was overcome with horror as he realized that the branches were wrapping around him. The panther circled below as Xeric struggled to get higher, barely managing to lift himself onto the thick branch. Xeric froze upon that tree, hanging on for dear life. As he looked below, his team was long gone, leaving him to his inevitable death. This is a death world, he thought to himself. The planet was a death trap, and this wasn't even the worst of what it had to offer. The branch Xeric held on kept on creaking as if it would break any second. He scrambled higher, his sight shifting from the tree to the creature lurking below. As he reached for the branch above, he froze on one of the higher branches. He saw a figure standing there effortlessly. At first, Xeric thought it might be another predator, but as the figure stepped into the light, he realized it was a person, a man. He was casually leaning against the tree, looking down on him with an amused expression, as if the chaos surrounding them was completely normal. His eyes were sharp, analyzing, but showed no fear. He was completely at ease, even with all the danger surrounding them. Before Xeric could speak, the man extended a hand toward him. "Need a hand?" he asked, his tone light and unbothered. Zark's translator immediately translated what the stranger was saying. He hesitated. He didn't know who or what that man was. "A trick, a trap," the panther below roared, prompting Xeric to throw caution to the wind and grab the hope that was dangling in front of him. Without even a grunt, that man pulled him up on the next branch like he weighed nothing. Xeric, who trained on multiple worlds, was stunned by his strength. He was by no means light yet. That man lifted him easily, as if helping a child. Before Xeric could even catch his breath, the stranger swung him over his shoulder and began running, leaping through the trees. The world blurred by as they moved, jumping from branch to branch with amazing speed and agility. Xeric held on in daze, overwhelmed by how fast they were moving. The wild beast left behind, frustrated, panting. Xeric finally managed to speak. What are you?" the man smirked, glancing over his shoulder. "Local, you almost became dinner. You're lucky it found you." His tone was casual, as if he just helped Xeric out from a minor inconvenience. Xer blinked as he struggled to wrap his mind around what was going on. His mission, his men, everything was falling apart. Dinner? What was that thing? Just one of the locals?